There's a moment that happens at every WrestleMania. The lights go out, the crowd rises to its feet, the music hits, and for a few seconds, WWE makes you believe that everything is exactly the way it was supposed to be. The biggest stars, the biggest stage, the biggest moments. Almost like WrestleMania was always destined to become the most important event in professional wrestling. But it wasn't. Because if you pull back the curtain, the history of WrestleMania starts looking very different. The first WrestleMania nearly became the most expensive mistake Vince McMahon ever made. One WrestleMania had to abandon a stadium because fans simply weren't buying tickets. Another changed its biggest match because of backstage politics. One of the most famous winning streaks in sports entertainment history ended with people backstage wondering if the company had made a mistake. And some of the biggest WrestleMania moments you've ever watched only happened because the original plans completely fell apart. WWE rarely tells those stories. Instead, we remember Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant. We remember Stone Cold shaking hands with Vince McMahon, the epic Rock standing across from John Cena, Shawn Michaels saying goodbye, The Undertaker walking toward the ring, Brock Lesnar ending the impossible, Roman Reigns holding the championship above his head, and Cody Rhodes finally finishing his story. Those are the moments everyone remembers. But the real story often begins after the cameras stop rolling. Because behind almost every legendary WrestleMania moment was somebody arguing backstage, somebody changing plans, somebody getting injured, somebody fighting for their spot, somebody wondering if the biggest show of the year was about to fall apart. Take WrestleMania VII. For years, WWE claimed the event moved because of security concerns, but many people inside the business tell a very different story. Or WrestleMania IX, a night that was supposed to establish Bret Hart as the future, suddenly became one of the most controversial decisions in company history. Then there was WrestleMania XXX, a show WWE wanted to headline one way, and fans demanded it end another. Even the Undertaker's streak, perhaps the most sacred tradition in WrestleMania history, wasn't as untouchable as people believed. And when Brock Lesnar finally ended it, the reaction wasn't just shock inside the stadium. It was shock backstage, too. Because that's the part of WrestleMania WWE rarely talks about. The uncertainty, the pressure, the politics, the panic. The nights when Vince McMahon was gambling millions of dollars. The moments when legends like Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, John Cena, Randy Orton, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and Cody Rhodes found themselves at the center of decisions that would change wrestling history forever. The real history of WrestleMania isn't just about what happened in the ring. It's about the matches that almost happened, the stadiums that almost sat empty, the careers that almost changed, and the moments when the grandest stage of them all came dangerously close to becoming something very different. Because before WrestleMania became a global phenomenon, it was a risk. And before we talk about the streak, Stone Cold, The Rock, Brock Lesnar, or Roman Reigns, we have to go back to a night in 1985, a night when Vince McMahon walked into Madison Square Garden, knowing that if his gamble failed, there might never be another
It's almost impossible to imagine WWE failing. The company fills stadiums. WrestleMania takes over entire cities. Fans travel thousands of miles just to be there. But in early 1985, none of that existed. Vince McMahon had spent years expanding outside the traditional wrestling territories. He was buying television time, signing expensive talent contracts, and taking risks that many people inside the business believed were reckless. Promoters thought he was moving too fast, competitors expected him to fail, and even people working for him weren't entirely sure this idea would work. Because WrestleMania wasn't just another wrestling show, it was the test. If it succeeded, Vince McMahon could change the wrestling industry forever. If it failed, he could lose everything. That's why Hulk Hogan became more than a champion. He became the face of the gamble. Today, people remember Hogan body slamming Andre the Giant at WrestleMania III. They remember the red and yellow colors, the massive crowds, and Hulkamania running wild. But before all of that, Hogan carried an enormous amount of pressure. WWE needed a mainstream star. They needed someone who could appear on television shows, attract media attention, and convince people that professional wrestling belonged in popular culture. That's why celebrities became involved. Mr. T, Cyndi Lauper, Muhammad Ali. Looking back, it feels obvious. At the time, it felt desperate. And when the first WrestleMania succeeded, WWE finally had proof that the gamble could work. But success created a new problem. Now every WrestleMania had to be bigger than the last, which led to one of the strangest decisions in the history of the event. WrestleMania II. 3 cities, 3 arenas, 1 night. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. Even today, the idea sounds complicated. Back then, it was almost impossible. Production teams were separated across the country. Communication was limited. Technical problems became constant concerns. WWE was trying to run 3 major live events at the same time. And while fans watched from home, the company was managing one of the biggest logistical challenges in wrestling history. Years later, another problem emerged, one that WWE would spend decades explaining differently. WrestleMania VII was originally scheduled for the Los Angeles Memorial Stadium, a massive stadium, nearly 100,000 seats. The company publicly pointed to security concerns surrounding the Gulf War and Sergeant Slaughter's controversial character. But many people within wrestling have long believed the real issue was far simpler: ticket sales. The seats weren't selling. The stadium suddenly felt too large, and WWE quietly moved the event into a much smaller arena. Think about that for a moment. Today, WrestleMania sells out stadiums in minutes. But there was a time when WWE feared people simply wouldn't show up. That uncertainty didn't disappear in the 1990s, because while WrestleMania was growing, a new generation of stars was arriving. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Steve Austin, The Rock. And with those stars came something far more dangerous than empty seats: politics, egos, creative battles, and decisions that could change wrestling history before the audience ever saw them. One of those decisions would happen at WrestleMania IX. Another would define the careers of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. And one day, a wrestler named CM Punk would spend years fighting for a WrestleMania moment that never came. Because sometimes the biggest WrestleMania stories never happened in the ring. They happened behind.
WrestleMania had survived. Vince McMahon had won his gamble. The company was bigger than ever. But success created a new problem. Who was supposed to carry WrestleMania next? For years, the answer had been simple: Hulk Hogan. If WrestleMania needed a hero, Hogan was the hero. If the company needed a main event, Hogan was the main event. But by 1993, WWE was trying to move forward, and Bret Hart was supposed to be the future. He wasn't the biggest superstar the company had ever had. He wasn't the loudest. He wasn't the most colorful. But he represented something different: a new generation, a new style, a new WWE. At WrestleMania IX, Bret entered the night as champion. The expectation was that the company would continue building around him. Instead, wrestling history changed in a matter of minutes. Yokozuna defeated Bret Hart. Then Hulk Hogan walked to the ring. A quick challenge was issued, and suddenly, Hogan left WrestleMania as champion. Fans inside the building were shocked. Bret Hart
was frustrated. And decades later, people still debate what happened behind the scenes. Because WrestleMania IX wasn't just about who won, it was about who held the power. And that question would continue following WrestleMania for years. As the Attitude Era arrived, the company found itself in another fight for survival. This time, the enemy wasn't poor ticket sales, it was WCW. And WrestleMania suddenly became the stage where WWE had to prove it could survive. That pressure created perhaps the greatest rivalry in WrestleMania history: Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock. 3 WrestleMania matches, 3 completely different stories. At WrestleMania XV, Austin became the rebellious hero. At WrestleMania XVII, one of the greatest WrestleManias ever, ended with a decision that still divides fans today: Stone Cold shaking hands with Vince McMahon, the same man he had spent years fighting. And even though the moment shocked audiences, it reflected something happening throughout WrestleMania history. The biggest decisions are often made because the company believes it needs something different. Meanwhile, another story was quietly growing: The Undertaker. When he won his first WrestleMania match, nobody was counting. There was no streak, no grand plan, no roadmap. But over time, something changed. Fans began paying attention. The victories started adding up. Suddenly, WrestleMania wasn't just another event for The Undertaker. It became his kingdom. Then came Shawn Michaels, and their rivalry produced 2 of the most celebrated matches in wrestling history: WrestleMania 25, WrestleMania 26, career versus streak. For many fans, this was the emotional peak of WrestleMania itself. But even the most sacred tradition in WWE would eventually face a question nobody thought possible: should the streak end? For years, the answer was no. Then Brock Lesnar entered the picture. When Brock defeated The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30, the reaction inside the stadium was unlike anything fans had ever experienced. People sat in silence. Some believed it was a mistake. Others thought the referee had counted incorrectly. Even people backstage reportedly couldn't believe the decision had actually happened. One of WrestleMania's greatest traditions ended in a single moment. And it proved something that had always been true: nothing at WrestleMania is untouchable. Not championships, not legends, not even history itself. The same frustration followed another superstar, CM Punk. For years, Punk believed he had earned a WrestleMania main event. He had become one of WWE's biggest stars. He held the championship for more than 400 days. Yet when WrestleMania arrived, other names stood above him. WrestleMania came and went. And Punk's disappointment became one of wrestling's most discussed real-life stories. Years later, another WrestleMania would face a different kind of pressure. Fans rejected the original plans. Bryan wasn't supposed to become the centerpiece of WrestleMania 30. The company had different ideas, but the audience refused to accept them. And for perhaps the first time, fans themselves changed WrestleMania. Today, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, and a new generation carry the event. Roman became the tribal chief. Cody returned to finish his story. And once again, millions of fans believed they knew exactly where WrestleMania was heading. But history suggests otherwise. Because behind every WrestleMania card is another version, another ending, another champion, another story. And while fans only see the final product, WWE often spends weeks, days, and sometimes hours rewriting history. But even after the card is finalized, even after the stars arrive, and even after the stadium fills with fans, WrestleMania still faces one final enemy.
By the time WrestleMania
The show
goes live,
itself.
most fans believe the hard part is over. The tickets have been sold. The stage is finished. The matches are announced. The superstars have arrived. The stadium is full. All that's left is the show. But people who have worked WrestleMania will tell you something very different. The most dangerous hours often begin right before the opening video. Because unlike a movie, WrestleMania doesn't get a second take. If something goes wrong, millions of people watch it happen live. And over the years, plenty of things have come dangerously close to going wrong. As WrestleMania grew larger, WWE began moving into outdoor stadiums. The visuals became bigger. The entrances became longer. The stages became enormous pieces of engineering. But those stadiums introduced a new opponent: the weather. Rain, wind, humidity, lightning, extreme heat. Things no wrestler can control. Things no script can rewrite. At certain WrestleManias, performers have walked to the ring while rain fell around them. Rings became slippery. Equipment became vulnerable. Production crews suddenly found themselves fighting nature itself. At WrestleMania 37, severe weather forced WWE to delay the show before it even began. Fans sat in the stadium waiting. The roster waited backstage. The biggest event of the year had been stopped by lightning. For a company built on controlling every detail, it was a reminder that WrestleMania still answers to forces bigger than WWE. And sometimes, the danger isn't outside the stadium, it's hanging above the ring. Modern WrestleMania stages weigh hundreds of tons. Massive video boards, lighting systems, speakers, pyrotechnics, and steel structures tower over the audience. The bigger WrestleMania became, the more complicated it became. Thousands of people now work behind the scenes: camera operators, engineers, electricians, stage crews, producers, technical directors. Most fans never see them, but without them, there is no WrestleMania. Because while Roman Reigns walks to the ring, while Cody Rhodes finishes his story, while Seth Rollins enters through the crowd, while John Cena returns, while The Undertaker appears one final time, hundreds of people are working behind the curtain to make sure the impossible looks effortless. And yet, despite all the planning, WrestleMania still finds ways to surprise everyone. Nobody expected The Undertaker's streak to end. Nobody expected Daniel Bryan to force his way into WrestleMania 30. Nobody expected Cody Rhodes to lose at WrestleMania 39. Nobody expected fans to reject certain main events. Nobody expected injuries to rewrite entire shows. Nobody expected a global pandemic to force WrestleMania into an empty building. And perhaps that's why WrestleMania still matters. Because for all the scripts, for all the planning, for all the production meetings, nobody truly knows what WrestleMania will become until the night is over. Vince McMahon didn't know if the first WrestleMania would save his company. Hulk Hogan didn't know if Hulkamania would last. Stone Cold Steve Austin didn't know he would help win the Monday Night War. The Rock didn't know he would become a global superstar. Shawn Michaels didn't know his final match would become a classic. The Undertaker didn't know his streak would end. CM Punk didn't know he would leave without his main event. Roman Reigns didn't know he would redefine an entire era. Cody Rhodes didn't know his story would take 2 years to finish. And that's the real history of WrestleMania. Not the championships, not the fireworks, not the attendance records, not even the matches themselves. It's the uncertainty, the risks, the arguments, the failures, the plans that changed, the opportunities that disappeared, the moments when everything almost fell apart. Because WWE wants WrestleMania to feel inevitable, but it never was. The grandest stage of them all wasn't built because success was guaranteed. It was built because year after year, people took risks. Some won, some lost,
Some became legends. Some became forgotten. But every one of them helped build the event that millions watch today. And perhaps the biggest secret WWE ever kept is this: long, dramatic pause, deep, deliberate delivery. WrestleMania was never perfect. It was never safe. It was never certain. Final emotional emphasis: it survived. Long, dramatic pause, soft, concluding documentary tone. And that may be the real story of WrestleMania.